There's a very thin line between doing something adventurous and doing something downright dangerous, and these people have turned walking that line into a profession. From letting themselves be run over by trucks to firing themselves out of cannons, these brave individuals have ensured that their names will go down in history. Here are the top 10 craziest stunts ever.
Amazing!
Number 10. JETMAN flies alongside bomber plane. Yves Rossi might be one of the coolest career stories out there, as well as maybe the world's coolest nickname. Starting out as a military-trained pilot and flying enthusiast, he's now known as the JETMAN because he spends his time building and flying experimental jetpacks. When he's not designing new carbon fiber wings or showing off his inventions at events, he's testing his speed with bizarre and exciting stunts. One of his most amazing ones was when he flew alongside a B-17 bomber plane in a pair of jet wings he'd made himself, reaching the unbelievable speed of 190 miles per hour. The wings were controlled with a joystick he held in his hands, and they allowed him to not only match the speed of the plane, but also its height. This meant he was soaring along at 12,000 feet. As if that isn't cool enough, he's previously flown across the Grand Canyon and launched himself from everything from a hot air balloon to a helicopter, just to test his new tech. He's even appeared on Toy Story, Top Gear, where this real-life Buzz Lightyear raced both the host and a professional rally car driver from the air. Number 9. 187 miles per hour bike ride. There's no denying that biking is a very popular sport, but it's not often thought of as a very extreme one. With that said, extreme is a perfect word to describe the stunt that pro cyclist Fred Rumpelberg managed to pull off in Utah in 2012. Just as a little bit of context, the normal maximum speed for a pedal bike is around 10 miles per hour, but Fred managed to achieve a speed of 167 miles per hour. He did this by cycling impossibly close to a drag racer that was speeding along in front of him, and that proximity allowed him to cycle in the air pocket the dragster created. That pocket brought the air resistance acting on the bike down to almost zero, allowing him to reach speeds that otherwise would have been impossible. However, if you think that's all there was to this stunt, then think again. Most bikes and most riders are not used to going anywhere near those speeds, so it was considered miraculous that he completed the stunt without crashing. Not only that, but he had to develop a special bike with a lower center of gravity so that the high speed wouldn't cause him to simply fly off track. Number 8. Breaking the freediving record. Freediving is already one of the most challenging and dangerous hobbies in the world, but Herbert Nish is famous for taking the sport to whole new levels. For those of you who don't know, freediving is a kind of diving that disallows any kind of breathing apparatus and instead relies solely on the diver's ability to hold their breath. Nish moved on to freediving when pool diving stopped being challenging for him, and he'd already developed some pretty impressive skills. He can hold his breath for over 9 minutes, and using a technique called packing, he can fill his lungs with 15 liters of air. To compare, normal human lungs can only hold around 6. This meant that right from the beginning, every free dive he did was record-breaking, but one in particular was almost too much even for him. Trying to break his previous world record of 700 feet or just over 200 meters, he aimed to hit a new depth of 800 feet or 240 meters. But something went wrong. He broke the record, hitting a depth of 818 meters or 831 feet. But swimming back up, he completely lost consciousness. This was due to narcosis, where the body loses consciousness due to high concentrations of nitrogen or hydrogen, which had never been seen in freediving before. Thankfully, he survived, but only after extensive rehabilitation. He incurred multiple brain strokes due to severe decompression sickness, and though doctors predicted he'd be wheelchair-bound for the rest of his life, his self-imposed nutritional and fitness regime healed him back to health. Whilst on land, he still incurs some balance and coordination issues, but underwater, he feels like a fish again. Number 7. Antti Pendikainen. Pulling off extreme and dangerous tricks is literally in a stuntman's job description, so you'd think that nothing would frighten them. Antti Pendikainen's website even features a quote from him saying he never gets scared before a new stunt, as well as calling him a man on the edge of the impossible. With that said, I think this trick must have freaked him out just a little, as it's a combination of two already dangerous sports. That's right, as part of his work with the Stunt Freaks team, Auntie combined motocross and skydiving to parachute off his motorbike 40 feet in the air. Now you're probably thinking that isn't all that scary. After all, most people jump from way higher than that. However, Auntie had to jump off a ramp to get enough height, and then immediately throw his bike away from him, as well as pulling his parachute in just a few seconds. This is taking parachuting to greater heights by literally jumping from lower heights. Jumping from a shorter height is actually way more dangerous because you have to pull your parachute so much faster, and just a second's delay can put you in serious danger. Number 6. Human speed bump stunt. Bodybuilders and strongmen have existed for most of human history, which means that strongman stunts have existed for a long time as well. However, Tom Owen's way of showing his strength is definitely a unique one, as he measures his strength by how many trucks can run over him. Yes, you heard me right. The man is also known as the human speed bump because he regularly allows vehicles to drive over his abs. Though the video you're about to see involves him being run over by 7 trucks, Tom has since worked his way up to 9, breaking his own record twice in the process. Unfortunately, records are not all that have been broken, as Tom has also broken his ribs in pursuit of his goals. This is because the rest of his body is not as strong as his muscles, and so if his special safety equipment breaks, his bones can take the full force of the trucks and be crushed. However, at 60 years old, Tom has shown no sign of slowing down and is still planning stunts. Number 5. Furthest ever human cannonball. Lots of kids take after their parents when it comes to what job they decide to do in the future. But I'll be honest, this definitely isn't your average family business. David Smith Sr. held the record for the furthest ever human cannonball flight. That is, until his son David Martin Smith Jr. overtook him. That's right, David Jr. grew up around his father, being fired from cannons at circuses around America, and decided he'd like to do exactly the same thing. He finally bested his dad's record in 2011, when in Italy he flew an incredible 193 feet and 8.8 inches, just under 60 meters. However, since he's expanded his skills even further, and now also holds the record for the highest ever human cannonball flight, in which he catapulted himself through a literal burning ring of fire. This shot had him reach heights of 85 feet and 4 inches before falling all the way down into a suspended net. I wonder if his kids will decide to carry on the family tradition. Number 4. Skydiving without a parachute. When you think about the most terrifying experiences you can pay to experience in your life, skydiving is probably top of the list. However, if there's one thing scarier than jumping out of a plane with nothing but a parachute to keep you safe, it's jumping out with no parachute at all. Sounds impossible, I know, but Gary Connery did it and was the first person in the world to do so. He jumped from a helicopter at 2,400 feet while wearing a wingsuit with no parachute and had only a pile of cardboard boxes to break his fall. Admittedly, it was a pretty huge pile of boxes, and it even had an arrow and a motivational message to point him in the right direction. It's still pretty terrifying though, and not something even most wingsuit enthusiasts would consider doing. With that said, Gary isn't the only person famous for his parachuteless stunts. Dar Robinson was a stuntman who did some pretty wild things for the movies, including falling 220 feet onto an air mattress with no parachute, setting a new world record. As if that wasn't enough, he then broke his own record again, free falling off a 1,170-foot tower in Canada from 700 feet. Number 3. Human Spider-Man climbs tallest building in the world. Superheroes don't exist in real life, but this guy is about as close as you can get. Elaine Roberts is known as the French Spider-Man, and is famous for scaling skyscrapers with nothing but a small bag of chalk and a pair of climbing shoes. Over the years, he's completed several terrifying and death-defying climbs, but nothing compares to the time he climbed Burj Khalifa in Dubai, at the time the tallest building in the world. Unfortunately, he was not permitted to climb unless he wore a safety rope, but watching the video you can see he doesn't rely on it even a little. However, recently urban climbing has come back in a big way, resulting in a new wave of fearless free climbers. Maybe the most infamous are Russian friends Vitaly and Vadim, who risk their own safety and run-ins with the law to climb the highest buildings and get the best photos. For example, they once climbed 650 meters up the Shanghai Tower with no safety equipment, just to document the view from the top. Even crazier is Oleg Cricket, who skateboards, flips, and even hangs over the edge of skyscrapers all over the world, resulting in footage that is undeniably awesome, but also pretty hard to watch without looking away. Number 2. Jumping the Grand Canyon. When it comes to crazy stunts, Evel Knievel is the undisputed king. Throughout his career, he achieved many amazing feats, such as jumping 50 cars stacked one on top of the other, 13 Pepsi delivery trucks, and 13 buses. When that became too easy, he pushed himself to jump the Snake River Canyon and even allegedly earned the world record for most bones broken and survived. However, his lifelong dream was to jump the Grand Canyon on his motorbike, something he was never able to do, due to the US government swearing they would never allow it. Luckily for him, his son Robbie Knievel grew up to be just as daring of a stunt rider, and he was finally able to honor his dad's dream in 1999. The jump caused a massive stir, with fireworks being let off as he crossed the canyon, and newscasts announcing that he would plummet 2,500 feet if he failed. Thankfully, he succeeded, hitting a speed of 80 miles per hour, breaking his own record for the longest distance jumped on a 500cc motorcycle, and flying an incredible 228 feet. Number 1. Wingsuiting through a human-sized hole. Lots of people are afraid of heights, and many are afraid of small enclosed places. However, if you happen to be afraid of both, I suggest you look away now. This is because daredevil Yuli Emanuel decided that a combination of the two was the best way to test his wingsuit flying skills. Having already won the Extreme Base Jump World Championship in Spain, he was looking for a new challenge when he found a rock formation in Switzerland that was only 2 meters wide. At the time, he was not confident enough in his skills to try and make it through, so he spent 3 years training even harder to accomplish the stunt. When he finally returned, he managed to glide through the tiny opening without a hitch, and even had time to joke around after landing. With that said, he still came impossibly close to crashing into the rock face, and is still the only person in the world to have attempted the stunt. Sadly, pushing the boundaries like this is extremely dangerous, as Yuli passed away in 2016 after attempting another daring stunt. His talent and fearlessness will not be forgotten anytime soon though. Which stunt did you think was the most daring? I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. Thanks for watching!